The Locked On Podcast Network presents The Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports.
And Governor Morrissey is suing the NCAA over the snub of the Mountaineers.
You are Locked On West Virginia, your daily podcast on the West Virginia Mountaineers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm going to go over some of the notes and things that I wrote down during Governor Morrissey's press conference, where they are challenging the NCAA ruling on, or whatever you want to call it, the NCAA committee's ruling on the West Virginia Mountaineers being left out in favor of North Carolina of the NCAA tournament. He started out by saying 111 of 111 brackets predicting the Mountaineers to go into the tournament. The first time in history that all 111 are predicting a team to go in had been wrong. Talked about the quad one wins, which we all know we had 6 of, undefeated versus the 3 and 4 quad 3 and 4 teams. He called this, quote, a miscarriage of justice and, quote, robbery at the highest levels. He said it stinks. He brought up North Carolina and Bubba Cunningham and how he's pulled off a miracle 2 years in a row, which is very true, by being in the room, the AD of North Carolina and the head of the committee. $70,000 bonus for Bubba Cunningham if West Virginia or North Carolina were to get in. This stinks. This stinks. Reeks of corruption, according to Governor Morrissey. He did note that they want to be collaborative with the NCAA. They want to work with the NCAA. He feels like this could be, are we left to feel like this could be retribution for 2023 regarding the Raekwon battle rulings? I don't know. He's going to launch an investigation into bribes, backroom deals, and more. Did it happen? Did Bubba Cunningham smooth or grease a couple palms to get Carolina into the tournament? Or was this simply the NCAA saying, look, we realize that West Virginia is no small brand, but they're not North Carolina, and so it's better for everybody if Carolina plays in the tournament? Guys, I learned some things I didn't know in that press conference. I didn't know Bubba Cunningham had a $70,000, and I get it. These are rich men. Is $70,000 a lot to the AD at North Carolina? No, but $70,000 is $70,000. That is a small house. That is a very nice luxury car. That is an inheritance. That is a lot of different things. And if you think that it's not important to somebody that wealthy, I got news for you. That's just not the truth, flat out. This is insanity. West Virginia was screwed. We know that. We got Dick Vitale. You've got Jeff Goodman. You've got everybody, even Dan Dockich, who was an Indiana guy. And Indiana has a gripe too, just about as big as West Virginia. It's close, right? So there are teams that have gripes in this scenario. I don't know what else to say other than that. We're used to this. I think people have called me crazy a couple times on the show for saying that we are abused as a program, that no, everybody goes through it. I truly believe there's something about West Virginia that a lot of, people hate at the top, especially, for multiple different reasons that I can say. We get looked over. Even we were in the Big East. The only time that we had a chance to actually land safely, we beat ourselves in a game versus Pitt. We were actually in a spot at number 2 to go to the national championship game. But that was after several years of winning 10 and 11 games, right? So we had to get there. We got there to that point. in this scenario, you've got a first-year coach that took upon an entire new roster with losing 35 points a game, Stone and DeVries. And you mean to tell me that 23 games later, the excuse for West Virginia not getting into the NCAA tournament is Tucker DeVries, who hadn't played since game 8? That right there lets you know that this stinks to high heaven, just like they said. It was literally, it was what they did to Florida State, except illegitimate. Like, I actually saw their side against Florida State, although I still feel like Florida State got screwed, but it was because they obviously lost their best player. West Virginia didn't lose Tucker DeVries in January. They might have lost, I think it might have been 20. It was almost 2024 when this happened. $68,000 richer because North Carolina got in the tournament. You can't, it's the biggest conflict of interest that you can think of, right? Let's put the people that stand to gain and benefit from certain things happening in charge. Surely to God, that can't be how this works. This billion-dollar industry can't be set up like this, can it? People have known about this. I didn't know that this kind of thing was happening. I thought this would be something you would vet ahead of time. Okay, you don't have any benefits for your team getting in your contract, you can be on the chair or whatever. You mean to tell me that North Carolina AD was allowed to head up the committee with the $68,000 bonus on the line for his team to get in? And then we're told that by people that was in the room that it wasn't done with the most integrity. When is it going to stop falling on us? A state that has so frustrating. Let me take a quick breath here. When is it going to stop happening to us? A state that has very little else to look forward to. We have no pro teams. We have literally nothing else. And thankfully, the women are in the tournament, and that's great. I'm proud of them, and I'm going to be rooting for them, and I'm going to follow that. It doesn't have the same impact as the men would, unfortunately. I don't mean that in any kind of derogatory way. It's just the truth. You know, the state kind of lives and dies with what the men's teams do, right? You know, it's just at a little bit higher of a level. I'm sure. Could the women catch fire and do some awesome stuff in the tournament and get us all really excited? Yeah, they could. I'm not saying they can't. But there are those of us that we're dreaming about, that dream about every single day, West Virginia, someday winning it, the whole thing, you know. And I hate it for this team. I hate it for Javon Small. I hate it for Tucker and Darren and everybody that put all in the effort. I can think back to when Darren DeVries was swamped when he first got to West Virginia, all by himself with no coaching staff trying to put this thing together. Feels like we're cursed sometimes. It really does.
March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. There's always that 5-12 you got to pick, and usually 2, maybe 3. That 4-13 matchup, FanDuel makes it easy to back them with spreads, totals, game props. With tournament games happening almost every day, there's always something exciting to bet on. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly. No waiting around. Looking at the first 4, we've got controversy. North Carolina, the most controversial team in the tournament, and they take on San Diego State tonight. The Tar Heels are favored by 5.5 points. We'll see if they reward the committee for placing them in the tournament. Visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoop action all tournament long.
Opening day in Japan. Could the Dodgers Japanese stars step up? Yeah, I'd say they stepped up.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The Dodgers started the season in Japan with a 4-1 victory over the Cubs. This was a game, obviously the first game in history where two Japanese-born starting pitchers started against each other on opening day. The fact that it happened to happen in Japan added to the mystique, and both starters were excellent. Both teams also have a superstar Japanese-born position player, and one of them stepped up. Obviously we care more about the Dodgers side. Shota Imanaga was great for his 4 innings. Yoshinobu Yamamoto was great for his 5 innings to earn the win, and Shohei Ohtani had 2 hits, scored 2 runs, led the offense. Yamamoto, let's talk Yamamoto. It was a different Yamamoto than we've ever seen before, I think.
Yeah, I mean, he was dialing it up for sure in terms of velocity and, touching 98 early on. The splitter looked really, really, really good. And I know there was at least maybe a couple concerns that I saw about the velocity in terms of he ramped it up last year against the Yankees and then got hurt. But this is the Yamamoto velocity we've seen most of the spring. Like, he's been amped up, ramped up, whatever you want to call it, since the start of spring. So I think this is just his velocity now. I don't think it's anything special or in terms of pitching in Japan or anything like that. Like, he's been throwing, he's been touching 97 all spring. And if this is the guy, I mean, I talked about the other day how excited I was to see him pitch this year. And this is exactly why, because I think he's going to step into that role of ace, that role of I'm the guy, and that role of comfortability that you see a lot of guys kind of get in their second, third year, whatever it is. And yeah, I mean, it was fun to watch. He probably could have got another inning, but the Dodgers have no reason to because their bullpen is so good.
Yeah, we'll talk about the bullpen in the third segment because that was a lot of fun to watch too. Yamamoto's splitter was he used it more frequently than he usually does. He threw it harder than he usually does, or at least than he has in previous seasons or last year with the Dodgers anyway. And it was kind of untouchable. He gave up one infield single off it that, should have been an out. And other than that, nothing off the splitter. It was ridiculous. And Karros and Joe Davis were talking during the broadcast about the splitter and how it used to be a more common pitch and how it's kind of starting to come back into popularity. And some of that might be these Japanese pitchers. And obviously in tomorrow's game, we're going to get to see Hiroki Sasaki's splitter, which is better than Yamamoto's. But Yamamoto's today, the way he threw this splitter, and the command, that was the big thing that stuck out to me, was the fact that he was throwing it just below the strike zone, even in the strike zone sometimes. Like, it seemed to me like, for the most part, Yamamoto was putting that splitter where he wanted to throw it, which is not always easy to do with the pitch that moves like that.
Yeah, I mean, you combine that with the fact, like, that one strikeout looking, and I forget what inning, was literally in the perfect right top corner of the. That
might have been. I think that might have been the last batter he faced.
Yeah. So I mean, it was. It finished out the 5th inning that way. Look, command was something that we knew he was going to have when he came over, but that was fastball command. If he can combine that with some splitter command, especially down in the zone, it just, the Dodgers are going to become known as a splitter team, especially once Ohtani gets back up. They're going to have those guys kind of living in the bottom of the zone, and then they're going to have the fastball probably play up in the top part of the zone, which is something that the Dodgers pitchers have done pretty well for the last few years. Yeah, it's exciting, and you don't want to get too hyped up. I mentioned the Cubs lineup is not the greatest lineup once you get past the first few guys, but still, compared to what we saw from Yamamoto in his game one last year, a lot better in that regard. And yeah, for him, I think just feeling comfortable as a pitcher in the big leagues now is going to be huge for him. And I mean, it's wasn't quite there with the strikeouts, but like you said, the splitter was basically unhittable, and you'll take a lot of weak contact any time of the day.
Absolutely. And even a lineup that isn't great after you get past the first few hitters, still got to get past the first few hitters. And he did. On the offensive side, Shohei Ohtani leading off for the Dodgers, led the team, went 2 for 5, a single and a double, both hit 107 miles an hour. The double was, Ryan Brazier, it was like Ryan Brazier has got to be like watching the replay right now and thinking, how in the world did he hit that thing 107 miles an hour? Because it was not a bad pitch at all. He had no business even getting the bat on the ball, and to drive it to right field the way he did. Will Smith, RBI single and 3 walks. So he is currently the team leader in OPS. Max Muncy had 2 walks, saw 32 pitches in 5 plate appearances, even though he didn't have a hit. Max Muncy is part of the reason that Shota Imanaga only went 4 innings because he drove up the pitch count, and then Teoscar Hernandez had an RBI single. Tommy Edman had an RBI single. All in all, just kind of a ho-hum Dodgers offensive day. We put up 4 runs. We won the game. The kind of game that, hopefully, I think we're going to see a lot more high-scoring games we saw here. But it kind of showed what this team is, that even on a day where the opposing starting pitcher was excellent and the offense, maybe didn't totally have it, they still put enough runs to win the game. And at the end of the day, Ohtani in a game that didn't stand out as, that was a very Ohtani game. He was 2 for 5 with 2 runs scored and hit the 2 hardest balls of the game.
One of the calling cards of the Dodgers offense, especially when it's going well, is getting into the bullpen. And sometimes it's maybe not the most fun thing to watch when when you have no runs, maybe squander a couple of scoring opportunities, but you look in the 4th, 5th inning and that pitcher is, 80 plus pitches. Now Imanaga wasn't quite that high, but in the first game of the season, 79 pitches might as well have been 99 pitches, and that's exactly what happened. And then that 5th inning, you get a new pitcher and the Dodgers score, right away. And that's kind of what, obviously this offense has the star power, has the, power in general to be able to put up runs in bunches. But, at the end of the day, at the very least, they're going to make pitchers work. I mean, Muncy, I think they said was 3 at-bats. He saw like 23 pitches or something like that. Like, yeah, he didn't get the hit and maybe swung at some pitches and struck out or whatever the case is. But that still plays into the entire, overall nature of the game. And that's how the Dodgers do it. And, that's how they got it done today. Imanaga had never walked more than 2 guys, or only 3 innings last year that he walked 2 guys in an inning. He had the best strikeout to walk ratio. And he's going to have to do some work to reverse that strikeout to walk ratio after this game.
Yeah, 3 times last year, walked 2 guys an inning, did it 2 times today. So he's got 1 more for this year. So save it for next time he plays the Dodgers, I guess, because Dodgers know how to work a pitcher, and they got the job done.
You are Locked On Longhorns, your daily podcast on the Texas Longhorns. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Texas and Xavier will meet for the 3rd time in program history tomorrow night in the first 4. The winner will move on to the round of 64 to play Illinois on Friday. To preview the matchup, here is part 1 of my conversation with Xavier beat writer Shelby Dermer. Joining us now to talk about this Wednesday's first 4 matchup between the Texas Longhorns and the Xavier Musketeers. He is Shelby Dermer, who covers the Xavier basketball program for the Cincinnati Enquirer, and he's nice enough to give us a few minutes to talk about this week's game. Shelby, thanks so much for the time, man. How are you today?
Brad, I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Doing great. I think both of us are in a similar boat, right? Selection Sunday was scary, a little anxious. But obviously, both of our teams end up making it into the NCAA tournament. I want to start right there. How surprised, or were you surprised at all, that Xavier did hear its name called on Selection Sunday?
Couple of elements to that, Brad, and maybe not so surprised that they got the bid. My surprise really came from that there was that 2-team cushion with San Diego State and North Carolina. I mean, you're Xavier fans everywhere, and of course, media too. Watching the games on Sunday, particularly that Memphis UAB matchup, and Memphis trailing at halftime, and Joe Lunardi comes on and says, hey, Xavier's the last team in. If Memphis can come back and win, they're the first team out if Memphis were to lose, and UAB is that bid stealer. But, going into the 3-day, 2.5-day wait Xavier had after losing to Marquette in that thrilling matchup at Madison Square Garden in the Big East Tournament quarterfinals, you had a lot of things really break Xavier's way. And, the Big East had a spotlight on it this time around because last year the bid stealers really impacted the bubble. And the Big East felt that with Providence, Seton Hall, and St. John's all having pretty strong resumes to get in the tournament, and all of them were left out. Providence went to the NIT. Seton Hall ended up winning the NIT. Rick Pitino said no thanks. So Xavier had a lot of things break their way Saturday, and then especially Sunday with VCU taking out George Mason, another potential bid stealer in the A-10 at Capital One Arena in D.C., and then, of course, that Memphis game that I just mentioned. So if you're looking at FanDuel odds, I know Indiana fans don't want to talk about that with where their odds were at going into Selection Sunday, but as soon as Memphis started pulling away in the second half of that matchup, Xavier's odds on FanDuel at least were climbing up into the minus 350, closing in on almost minus 400 to make the NCAA tournament. So you had to feel pretty good. But the fact that they had that two-team cushion and they were the third two teams below them in the last four in was a surprising factor for sure.
Yeah, Shelby, tell us a little bit about the Xavier team. 21-11 this year, 13-7 in the Big East, which was tied for fourth in the conference. What are some of the strengths and maybe some of the weaknesses for this Musketeers team that the Longhorns are going to see on Wednesday?
Well, the committee won't take into consideration, and I think Sean Miller said this yesterday when he was talking about his playing days at Pitt, the last 10 games, how you were playing going into the tournament was always a factor. This time around, it's not as big of a factor, but certainly every coach wants to be playing their best basketball in the all-important months of February and March, and Xavier's been doing that. 12 of their last 16 games they won. They went 12-3 to end the regular season, a big 7-game winning streak where now looking back, if they have any slip-up in conference play, it may have cost them an at-large bid. So definitely playing their best basketball as the tournament comes around, which is what you want to do. So that's definitely a strength. They're getting some bench production from Jerome Hunter, a veteran who was on the Sweet 16 team 2 years ago, and Dante Maddox. I know Xavier fans really think he seems like a guy who's going to come into March Madness and take fans by storm with the way he can shoot the three and the way he's kind of been up and down off the bench. So those are definitely some strengths. Some weaknesses for Xavier is that some tight games this season, they've come up short, and especially games where they could have won. And that's why, if they weren't picked yesterday, it would have been a big season of what-ifs just continuing, because their last two trips to Madison Square Garden, they had double-digit second-half leads against St. John's and Marquette. You win both of those, you're not worried about the bubble very much.
Right.
They cough up both of those big leads, and now they kind of had to sweat on Selection Sunday. So playing with a lead, keeping the lead, playing a full 40-minute effort, as Sean Miller said several times in press conferences, is definitely a concern going in Xavier's ability to finish off games.
Yeah, you talked about that 7-game win streak to cap off the regular season, right? What changed? I know you mentioned bench production. Maybe that's a part of it, but what started working more for Xavier that got them off the bubble and actually into the tournament?
Well, for starters, the schedule kind of eased up.
Yeah.
And that was one thing where Xavier played such a front-loaded Big East schedule, and they were in a bunch of tight games, lost a lot of close games, pulled out some big wins in there, thinking at Marquette, that's the only quad one win on the resume, 59-57, going up to Pfizer Forum and holding that Marquette offense to just 57 points was big. They come back home and beat UConn at home at Cintas Center in a big environment. That was a close game. But then over that 7-game winning streak, they got to play Butler twice. They beat Providence twice. They came back home and played DePaul. Their last 6 games, they had 4 of them at home, and then one of those away games was just west in Butler in Indianapolis. So not a lot of travel. They got to rest a little bit, stayed at home, and it wasn't one thing just to beat the bottom teams of the Big East, but they did it convincingly. Over that 7-game winning streak, they won those games by 12.7 points per game, and that includes a 22-point drubbing of Creighton, which is a pretty impressive feat to pull off with how Creighton is always in March Madness, and they got a pretty tough draw against Louisville in the first round. So I think that was the biggest change for Xavier, and I think location of the game coming up on Wednesday is something you might touch on with how close it is to Cincinnati, but staying at home and really handling its business. And then maybe the other thing, like you mentioned, I talked about bench production, but Zach Freemantle coming back. That front-loaded Big East schedule got even harder when you have to go at UConn to Hartford and then come home and play Marquette without your best player, your leading scorer and rebounder. And they lose to UConn in overtime in Hartford at XL Center. UConn was ranked at the time. Then they come back home, play a Marquette team, lose by 2 on a controversial play at the buzzer when they come back and rally in that game. So the schedule eases up. Zach Freemantle comes back, and Xavier kind of becomes this well-oiled machine that played its best ball in March.
Shelby Dermer of the Cincinnati Enquirer joining us here talking Texas and Xavier. Yeah, you bring up the name Zach Freemantle. Shelby, I feel like that guy has been in college basketball since I was wearing diapers. I mean, he has been around the block a time or two. Was on the roster when Texas and Xavier met in the Sweet 16 in 2023, but he was hurt, so he didn't play in that game. Talk about Zach Freemantle and why he's such a matchup nightmare for opposing defenses.
Yeah, well, he's shown the ability to step out behind the arc and hit threes, but just down low, it seems like he's been sizzling as of late. I mean, he was in over 20 points the last 3 games in the regular season. He had another strong showing, after a slow start against Marquette. That kind of really turned into Ryan Conwell's show with 38 points in that matchup, but Zach was great too, except a crucial missed dunk in the second half that would have put Xavier up 6 with, I think, less than 10 minutes to go. And so, yeah, he's been the biggest story for Xavier just last year. He and Jerome Hunter, who did play in that Texas game in the Sweet 16, they both missed last year, and Xavier could not handle the front court injuries. This year, Xavier lost its starting center, Lucina Traore, to a torn ACL back in October, and it was up to Zach, Jerome, a little bit of John Hughley coming off the bench to kind of carry that weight down low for an undersized Xavier team. Fremantle's the tallest guy on the roster, just 6'9". So he's an undersized 5. He would have been the starting 4 had Traore not been hurt. So he's stepped up and played very physical. And I think defense was the question mark. Not a lot of people talk about Zach Fremantle's defense because he was such an offensive weapon for Xavier, and that's what he was known for. But he's playing some of the best defense of his career too.
March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. There's always that 5-12 you got to pick, and usually 2, maybe 3. That 4-13 matchup, FanDuel makes it easy to back them with spreads, totals, game props. With tournament games happening almost every day, there's always something exciting to bet on. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly. No waiting around. Looking at the first 4, we've got controversy. North Carolina, the most controversial team in the tournament, and they take on San Diego State tonight. The Tar Heels are favored by 5.5 points. We'll see if they reward the committee for placing them in the tournament. Visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoop action all tournament long.
What a win for the Pacers in Minnesota.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast.
Oh, wow. How? I don't even know where to start. I don't even know what words to say. I think I'll start with how. Wow. What? Pacers win in Minnesota. They did not have Pascal Siakam. They did not have Tyrese Halliburton. They did not have Aaron Nesmith. They did not have Miles Turner. They did not have Johnny Furphy. Andrew Nembhard got ejected. Benedict Mathurin fouled out, and they won. They won the game. This is the same bench group that everybody's been roasting deservedly for 2 games in the last 10 days before this that were lost because the bench was so bad, and they get it done. Wow. What a game for the Pacers. One of their most improbable wins I can remember from them in recent years. Up there, probably second to it, but right up there with the Kiefer Sykes, Torrey Craig, Justin Holiday, Goga Batadze group that won in Golden State 4 years ago. What a win by the Pacers. And the reason this one maybe stands out or feels a little different than that one where Steph was going crazy is they made play after play in clutch big moments. And a lot of that was making threes that were very important, but it was a remarkable, remarkable game for the Pacers. And I want to start in overtime, and I also kind of want to set the scene. You kind of have to set the scene first, but like deservedly so. The chatter before the game was about the Pacers kind of punting it, right? No Siakam for personal reasons already. Going into the day, questionable Nesmith, questionable Halliburton, questionable Turner, Furphy's sick, right? They're missing guys. And if it's a 3rd and 4 nights already, and the Pacers have a back-to-back Wednesday, Thursday, meaning it's also the start of a 3rd and 4 nights. 11 and 15 coming at home. If you're already missing Siakam, I'm not saying you should ever punt a game in a seeding race, but if you have a lot of guys with nagging injuries, this would be the game to theoretically think about doing something like that. Give your guys extra chances to recover in between back-to-backs. So I wouldn't have done it. I guess I don't know what they did or didn't do, but regardless, they had lots of guys out. And they lost 2 guys who were playing well at different times during the game. Nembhard was playing very well, like being more point guardy, for lack of a better term, than normal. His passing was sharp. He was making his shots in the mid-range, playing good defense, right? They needed him with Ant over there. Ben Mathurin, who wasn't making his twos, but was making his threes and was getting to the line, had 22 points. Those two both had to leave the game early for different reasons. The scene was set for a disaster for the Pacers. They really had 7 players you'd consider like night in, night out NBA talent when the game started. And that's Nembhard and Mathurin, Walker, Toppin, Bryant, McConnell, and Shepard. And 2 of them didn't finish the game. Quentin Jackson, Enrique Freeman, Tony Bradley, Ray J. Dennis, and James Johnson also available. The latter of 2 who did not play. That's the team the Pacers had available for this game, and they won. And I have to start now talking about the game with the end, because Obi Toppin just went crazy. What an ending for Toppin, who had the crazy game in Washington last month that felt like, wow, look, this hot Obi Toppin moment just saved them in an overtime win. He outdid himself in the exact same situation. Obi Toppin averages per game, per every game he plays, about 10 points a game. Under 10 points a game entering today. It's now above that. He, per 36 minutes, averages less than 19 points. In this game, in the overtime alone, he scored 12 points, more than he averages per game. And he didn't even do it across the whole frame. He did it in under 3 minutes. It was an insane heater at the perfect time. And the reason that talking about this game is so fascinating is, in a vacuum, if I described all the plays Toppin made, it would be fun to run through and explain how the Pacers won in overtime and how Obi Toppin did this. And I'm going to do that. But if you didn't watch it, you need to know this. And if you did watch it, I think you need to be reminded how many times it crossed a viewer's mind, oh, it's over, right? The Wolves had several moments, including a 10-0 run to start the fourth, where it felt like they got it. They got the win. And most people, I would say, watching, who either cover, in my case, or Dustin's case since he was there, whoever, any other podcaster or people who cover it, probably thought, all right, well, good fight. They played well. Like, most people will be happy with that performance, even in a loss. Like, no one would be defeated in that moment. But every time that happened, they responded in this crazy way. And it made the game so fun, right? Such a fun basketball game. So overtime, they get to it thanks to a great McConnell shot, which we'll get to. And overtime, does it go their way to start? Ant gets fouled. Randall gets fouled. The I almost said the Warriors. The Timberwolves are up 4, and the Pacers didn't score for the first 2 minutes of overtime, right? Running low on steam. The Wolves played the night before, but the Pacers needed something. Insert Obi Toppin. 2 minutes and 50 seconds to go on a whipper from Ben Shepard. Hits a 3. It's a 1-point game. And then Ant instantly responds, right? One of those just like, oh, man, this is going to be tough. Like, especially because the last time the Pacers saw Ant, he went crazy in clutch time and had that insane block on Aaron Nesmith, right? It's what he does. So after that, Ant shot another moment where it felt deflating for the Pacers. Obi Toppin says, no matter. Ben Shepard's going to get me the ball again on the right wing, and I'm going to drill another 3. Tied the game with 2 minutes and 25 seconds to go. Toppin had 28 at the time. A backbreaker. On the other end, Mike Conley hits a 3. And this 3 from Mike Conley, right wing, he banked it at the buzzer of the shot clock. This 3 was so off that Quinn Buckner, God love him, the second it came out of Conley's hands, he said, brick. And it was so far to the right. It hit way up high on the right side of the backboard and banked right in. It kind of whirled through the rim. And then it was way off and it went in. And another moment where it's like, man, the Pacers fought, but like, if that shot's going in, they don't have it tonight. Alas, obviously you can tell by the way I've talked about the game, my tone of voice, they did, in fact, come back. They get some key stops, even though they themselves did not score. I think their next trip, they get a key stop. Anthony Edwards gets fouled. Thomas Bryant finally gets a 3 to go with a minute to go, and they get one more stop. So the Pacers now have the ball down 2 in the final minute. And again, it's Obi Toppin at the top of the key, running fast from the right wing to the top of the key with a dribble in between. McConnell flipped it to him. He took another 3 after hitting his last 2 and banked it in. The basketball gods smiled back on the Pacers. They saw the Mike Conley shot. They said, that's not fair. You get one. Here you go, Obi Toppin. It banks in, and the Pacers are now winning. And Obi Toppin has 9 points in the overtime. Anthony Edwards draws a foul on the next trip. He hit them both. Like, the Wolves go up 1 with 19 seconds to go. Again, if that had ended the game, most people who watched it, most fans of the Pacers would have been like, that sucks. It's lame that they didn't have everybody. But good effort from the guys available. Again, do not give up on Obi Toppin. TJ McConnell dribbles around, gets into the paint, sees Toppin moving to the left corner. When have we seen a Pacers buzzer beater from the left corner ever before? 6 days ago. Toppin catches in the left corner, lets a tough 3 fly, and buried it. His 4th 3 of overtime for 12 overtime points. They came, yes, in a 5-minute period. They all came in 2 minutes and 54 seconds. The Wolves go to Randall. Thomas Bryant bodies him up. Very good defense from Thomas Bryant. Randall just short. Pacers win. Ridiculous overtime from Obi Toppin. He hit 7 threes in this game. That is a career high for Obi Toppin, who transformed his shot last year. It has not been nearly the same this year. But he hit 6 threes in a game earlier this season. He had 6 threes in a game with the Knicks in 2021-22. He had never gotten to 7. The 7 happened today. The 6, by the way, was the aforementioned Wizards game, when he had 31 and 10 in a key overtime win. This time he had 34 and 10 in a key overtime win. So a season high and career high in threes made. 34 is his Pacers high for scoring. He scored 42 once with the Knicks against a not really very much trying Raptors team 4 seasons ago. 12 made shots is tied for his Pacers high as well. Did it with a double-double. He was, I predicted yesterday, going to start even if everybody else was playing and just Siakam was out. And this is the kind of game where he can help. The Wolves don't play that fast. They could have used the juice. That was just something else. He is now twice this season, for all the ups and downs Obi Toppin has had, right? Really good in December, filled in as the the backup center at times this year, and has kind of waned with some bad games where his defense isn't there. He played 5 minutes in a game last week, right? This was as good as he can be. With the he made 5 twos, he got to the foul line, he got rebounds, he was pushing in transition, and he, of course, going 7 for 10 from 3 obviously helps you look really good, but he was just phenomenal, and the Wolves could not stop him when it mattered. And among many things that went well for the Zombie Pacers, the 4 for 4 with 12 points overtime period for Toppin was exceptional. And in the second half of the game, he had 9 points and 5 boards, which means he was very good opening the game too. 13 first half points, 5 rebounds, plus 9 in that half, right? The starting group was pretty good. The same group that has stunk off the bench of late for the Pacers. I talked about adjustments the Pacers could make rotationally yesterday. Obviously, they couldn't do any of that in this game with the players available, but I was wrong. The answer to solve the Pacers bench problem was just start all of them. Perfect. There we go. It worked in this one. Toppin was awesome. So many other individuals and moments from this game.
March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. There's always that 5-12 you got to pick, and usually 2, maybe 3. That 4-13 matchup, FanDuel makes it easy to back them with spreads, totals, game props. With tournament games happening almost every day, there's always something exciting to bet on. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly. No waiting around. Looking at the first 4, we've got controversy. North Carolina, the most controversial team in the tournament, and they take on San Diego State tonight. The Tar Heels are favored by 5.5 points. We'll see if they reward the committee for placing them in the tournament. Visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoop action all tournament long.
The Sacramento Kings start a brutal 7-game homestand with a much-needed victory.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast.
I needed this Kings win as much as anybody else did, right? Not that all of my fears have suddenly gone away. Not that I'm not scared, you know what, of the Cleveland Cavaliers coming into this building on Monday, or the Bucks on Wednesday, or the Bucks on Saturday, or the Thunder and the Celtics early next week, right? There's still a lot of concerns with this team, and not everything is fixed after this game, but there was a lot from tonight's game that was fun and that was needed. And I think that wasn't just for me. That wasn't just for the Kings fans. I think that was also for this Kings team as well. This felt like, in many ways, not necessarily a get-right game, because suggesting you're getting right means that you're getting right would be like you're back to a high level and you expect it to carry on. I don't think this was enough to reinsert the Sacramento Kings back into the thoughts of, oh, this is a playoff team once again or anything like that. But this was a needed victory. It was the way that they won this game, the way that they beat the Grizzlies 132 to 122. First and foremost, the crowd here inside the Golden One Center was fantastic. I was a little concerned. I was looking around. It was a little bit sparse before tip-off, and I was like, are Kings fans not going to show up? Are they frustrated? Are they exhausted like myself with how this road trip went? It's a Monday night, too. Oh, no. They showed up, right? As usual, the Golden One Center crowd was amazing. Kings fans brought that energy that this Kings team is going to desperately need over this 7-game homestand. But specifically, this is the special kind of Sacramento energy that responds to and loves and embraces hustle and defense, right? When the Kings play hard, when the Kings hustle, dive for loose balls, lock in on defense, force steals, and get out in transition, this crowd, this city eats that up. And the Kings delivered that tonight, and the crowd responded tenfold. Sacramento's team defense tonight was fantastic. 11 steals in this game, 7 blocks. They scored 21 points off of 18 Memphis Grizzlies turnovers. They also had 16 fast break points. Those numbers are sensational. But I also want to lump in an offensive number with the defense, because I don't think it's a coincidence. I definitely think these numbers are connected. The Sacramento Kings as a team had 35 assists tonight. The ball was moving, they were sharing the basketball, and of course, shots were falling as well. I do not think at all that it is a coincidence that when the Sacramento Kings are hustling and creating energy and getting the crowd going with their defense and getting these opportunities in transition, offensively, life is so much easier for them. I know this is a more gifted half-court offensive team than they were last year or 2 years ago when the Kings relied so heavily on transition as a part of their offense. In the half-court, they're very dynamic and they have a lot more of an ability to score in isolation and slow it down with guys like DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine, of course. But when this team is building that energy for themselves by creating stops and hustling on the defensive end of the floor, I mean, that the ball, this is a term of Doug Christie, like, right? The ball has energy when you make those kind of defensive plays, and that energy transfers between teammates with passes and with cuts and with reads and with everybody playing together on the same page. I do not expect this kind of defensive effort from the Sacramento Kings on a nightly basis, but one of the things Doug Christie said in an episode of The Run, which, if you're not familiar with The Run, it's like the behind the scenes documentary series that the Sacramento Kings put out on their YouTube channel that goes behind the scenes of the season, right? And there was a clip on there of Doug Christie from practice on one of their more recent episodes, and he basically told the guys, he's like, "You done effed up now because you showed me that you can do it. So now I'm going to hold you to that standard." The Kings showed us all that they can play with that kind of defensive hustle and intensity. Now, they're taking on a Memphis Grizzlies team that was without Ja Morant, so that's a big deal. Not that that takes away anything from what the Sacramento Kings did tonight. Desmond Bane nearly dropped 50 points in this game, right? Memphis still a very dangerous team, even without Ja Morant. So hopefully Sacramento can do something like this against a Cleveland Cavaliers team that's very, very dangerous, as we know, or some of the other opponents that are coming through. I don't expect this to be who they are every single night, but they've shown that they're capable of doing it. And they got some massive boosts from Jake LaRavia and Devin Carter. This was a revenge game for Jake LaRavia, right? The Memphis Grizzlies, his former team. The Kings traded for Jake LaRavia from Memphis at the trade deadline. He was a huge part of the defensive spark that really got the Sacramento Kings going in the first quarter. Bad first quarters have been a real issue for the Kings over this 4-game losing streak. They got off to a really strong first quarter, and a lot of it, again, was because of the defense. When Jake LaRavia and Devin Carter specifically came into the game in that first quarter, things changed really quickly for the better. The Kings went on a massive 10-0 run to end the first quarter and take a double-digit lead into the second quarter, which was fueled by LaRavia and Carter. Jake tonight, 12 points, 4 of 7 from the field, a couple of steals, and a block. He had a dunk in transition in the first half where he threw it down, crowd's going nuts, and he turns and he says something to the Grizzlies bench. I don't know what he said, but we all saw it. We all saw it in the media section. Like, yeah, Jake LaRavia is talking. This is the epitome of a revenge game. And then he actually fouled out of this game. He was playing very aggressive defensively. A couple of the fouls, like the foul where he fouled out on Jalen Wells. Shout out Jalen Wells, Folsom High School alum. Where he fouled out should not have been a foul. I thought it was ridiculous. Doug Christie challenged it and somehow lost the challenge. Even I don't need to go down that rabbit hole right now. This is a positive episode, at least at this moment. And then he got a technical foul after it for saying something to the referees. I ain't even mad at it. You know what? Like, you played good defense. This is an emotionally charged game for you. I didn't know this, but I was informed. Apparently, like, Jake was not very well liked in Memphis. I have no idea if that's from his teammates that were there when he was with the Grizzlies, but apparently Grizzlies fans were not too keen with Jake LaRavia and how he played or anything like that. So there was some emotional charge behind this game for Jake. And he played fantastic for the Kings. And then Devin Carter, man. I've been tough on this kid, and I think he's been put in a very unfair situation in a lot of ways because he is behind the 8 ball because of the shoulder surgery, right? It's not his fault that the Sacramento Kings drafted him. I still don't think it was the right draft pick for Monty McNair and this Kings front office to make, given the win-now status of the Sacramento Kings. But none of that is Devin Carter's fault. He's been trying to work his way in, and this was a game where in his 10 minutes he showed Kings fans, he showed us all, like, no, this is the kind of hustle player that I can be. Right, he had 4 steals and a couple of assists in 10 minutes. He also tried to throw down a dunk in transition in the second half that I'm telling you this place would have exploded, and he nearly pulled it off. I like to see him go for it. Hey, what's stopping you, kid? And he's playing like he's completely healthy. He's playing like that shoulder is not a concern to him at all. He's playing physical. He was a nuisance for the Grizzlies tonight. So great to see Devin Carter have one of his best, if not his best game as a King so far in his young career. Jake LaRavia was fantastic for the Sacramento Kings in his revenge game against the Memphis Grizzlies.
March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. There's always that 5-12 you got to pick, and usually 2, maybe 3. That 4-13 matchup, FanDuel makes it easy to back them with spreads, totals, game props. With tournament games happening almost every day, there's always something exciting to bet on. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly. No waiting around. Looking at the first 4, we've got controversy. North Carolina, the most controversial team in the tournament, and they take on San Diego State tonight. The Tar Heels are favored by 5.5 points. We'll see if they reward the committee for placing them in the tournament. Visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoop action all tournament long.
The Houston Rockets extend their longest winning streak of the season to 7 games, rallying from down 25. The Rockets getting the 144-137 overtime win against a Philadelphia 76ers team that did not know how to miss when it came to shooting the basketball in this game. They shot a blistering 49% from downtown in this game. The Sixers they hit 15 threes by halftime compared to just 5 by the Rockets. This game felt like it was over or going to be a blowout at so many different various points. 76ers led by 21 at halftime. And man, this game was just a total roller coaster, wild feeling kind of game. We're going to talk about all the different parts of it, the crazy ending, the rally from down 25 in the third quarter, the different areas of problems in this game, Fred and Tari both being ejected by the officials, Dylan Brooks fouling out, Jalen's career playmaking night, Jabari with a 30-piece off the bench. So much to get into from this game. But I think where we have to start is at the end with kind of the wild sequence at the end of this game that led to the overtime period. And I want to give a lot of credit to this Rockets team first and foremost, because it's really hard, right, for NBA teams when they do go down big, 20 plus, 25, whatever. This comeback ties a Rockets franchise record for largest comeback in franchise history. They came back from down 25 against the Spurs back in the 2019-2020 season. It was like December 2019, I believe. They were down 25 at halftime against the Spurs. This was the Russ Harden era Rockets. And I was actually at that game, of all things. It was kind of crazy to see that stat pop up on the broadcast. But to have the mental fortitude and the composure to overcome a 25-point deficit and to do it despite the insane shooting night that the 76ers were having, to overcome your own shooting struggles in this game, to rally, to overcome some kind of questionable officiating at times. Courtney Kirkland was in his bag in this game in particular. So I want to commend the Rockets and the youth on the Rockets for kind of getting past those mental barriers and being able to finish out this game strong, especially without Fred VanVleet. Because look, there were various points where it felt like this game was going to be lost. When Tari Eason got ejected after a pair of back-to-back fouls, kind of gift wrapping Quentin Grimes like 5 points in a row, which ballooned the lead to 125-115. That kind of felt like, all right, here it is. This is the end. They don't have enough runway. 76ers are going to run away with it. And then Fred VanVleet, when his flagrant one, which shouldn't have even been a flagrant one, gets upgraded to a flagrant 2, and then he gets kicked out of the game, and the Rockets are down 4 instead of Fred VanVleet being at the free throw line, taking 3 free throws on the 3-point shot where he absolutely got fouled by O'Shea Brissett. I mean, it should have been a 1-possession game. Instead, the 76ers got the ball and they got a pair of free throws out of it. There were various points where it felt like the Rockets were going to lose this game, and they didn't. But even outside of all that, look, the Rockets were down. To walk through the ending sequence of this game, the Rockets were down 129-121 after Quentin Grimes hit a huge three-pointer that kind of felt like a dagger at that point after the whole sequence involving Fred and Brissett. So 64 seconds left in the game. Rockets are down 129-121. Jalen Green gets a huge block on Justin Edwards, a good defensive stop. There's a coach's challenge and everything. Rockets wind up getting the ball, and Jabari Smith Jr. gets a really good look at a 3, misses it. They get an offensive rebound. Jabari Smith Jr. hits a huge 3-pointer to cut it to a 1-possession game. Jared Butler gets a couple free throws. Jalen Green gets a very quick layup on the other end. Still a 1-possession game, 131-128, and it's under 10 seconds to play. Rockets wind up forcing the turnover that they needed, and Jalen Green gets a huge steal. So a couple very key defensive plays for Jalen Green late in this game to cap off what was a fantastic night for Jalen Green. More on him later. Rockets call timeout, and they draw up a play. They need a 3. And the play they draw, they get the pistol formation. Jalen Green's in the backcourt. They lob it into Jabari Smith Jr., and he's got his back to the basket. 76ers immediately foul him. This is the problem in today's NBA is when you're up 3, a lot of coaches like to foul up 3. Jabari gets to the free throw line, hits the first one. Fantastic. But now the Rockets need a miracle. They sub in Steven Adams and Alperen Sengun. Sengun has been benched since the midway point of the third quarter, because Ime Udoka opted to go small in order to fight his way back into this game. He went small to combat the 76ers' small lineup. And we'll talk about that decision and whether it was the right one, the wrong one, how things could have been handled differently there. But he checks Sengun back in. Literally his first seconds of fourth quarter action. And then Jabari Smith Jr., just chef's kiss, perfectly, beautifully, excellently misses the second free throw with like the softest touch ever. It bounces up, and Steven Adams does a great job clearing out two guys on the free throw line box out. Şengün gets in there, gets the offensive rebound, doesn't bring the ball back down, puts it back up and in. The biggest play of the night from Jabari Smith Jr. missing that free throw, and the biggest shot of the night made by Alperen Şengün, despite having been benched up to that point. And the Rockets were able to tie this thing up at 131 all. And then from that point on, Ime Udoka kept Alperen Şengün in the game to start overtime. And Şengün started overtime in a big way. He had an and one at the very beginning of the overtime period. Then he had an assist out to Jalen Green for 3. And he wrapped up OT with a pair of free throws a little bit later on in the period. Just a really dominant showing from Alperen Şengün. And again, I want to give Şengün a ton of credit here for staying mentally locked in. It'd be really easy to get benched. And Ime Udoka talked about this post game, that Şengün wasn't happy about sitting on the bench. Nobody's ever happy when they get benched. But for him to still be mentally locked in and ready to contribute when his number was called upon at the end of regulation, and then to be there and to be himself and to take over that overtime period was impressive. And again, it's just a testament to this whole Rockets team, a testament to him, to the mental fortitude of this whole team to be able to rally from down 25, but not just rally and get back into it, but then to withstand another handful of haymakers from the 76ers in this game. This game constantly felt like, okay, 76ers, they had a hot shooting first quarter. Cool. They'll cool down, right? Oh, hot shooting entire first half. Cool. They'll cool down. All right, third quarter's here, and they're still on fire. The Rockets rallied back into it. Cool. All right, 10-0 run at the top of the fourth. Here it goes. They're going to let go. Like, the 76ers were just on fire this entire game. Hat tip to them. A lot of credit to them. Quentin Grimes had the game of his career high in points, career high in rebounds. It took every ounce of effort and execution that the Rockets had to be able to win this game, but they got it done. An absolute roller coaster of a game. Just a wild one from start to finish.